So I'm presenting on Edward Thorndike, and here's a picture of him. And right now I'm going to use the law of association and the law of similarity. And so one way that you will not forget who Edward Thorndike is we all know who Theodore Roosevelt is. And we can see that Theodore and Thorndike, they both start with T, kind of similar in their sounds. And then they both had great mustaches, kind of the same hairdo, kind of around the same time. And Theodore Roosevelt, he preserved a lot of land for animals. And so then Thorndike, though, he was the first to use non-human subjects in psychology, so he used animals. And so when you hear the word Edward Thorndike, you'll know what he looks like, and you'll know that he used animal subjects, the first one in psychology to do so, by just remembering Theodore Roosevelt. Some interesting facts about Thorndike. He was born August 31st, 1874 in Williamsburg, Massachusetts. He was a minister's son, and his family, they moved 8 times across the New England area. And he was very shy and reserved, but he also was self-efficient, and this helped him later in his work in life. He graduated from Wesleyan University with his bachelor's degree. So some of the breakthroughs that Thorndike had and some of the things that aided him in his breakthroughs is he learned and worked alongside James and Cattle. He aided in the change from functionalism to behavioralism in psychology. And these points, we'll go over them more in depth throughout the presentation. We're just kind of going over the highlights right now. He was the first in psychology to use non-human subjects, and he used these animals to study learning and behavior. An interesting quote that I was very fond of that came from him is, "Psychology is the science of the intellects, characters and behaviors of animals, including man." He also proposed the law of exercise and the law of effect, which we will go over. So first we'll start off with the law of exercise. And this was similar to hedonism and associationism. It can be broken down into 2 categories, the law of use and the law of disuse. So the law of use is exactly what it sounds like. It's an association. When association is stronger, an association is stronger the more it is used. And so the more frequently it is used, the stronger it is. And then the law of disuse is when an association is weaker if it is used little or not at all. And so an example of this is like your arm. If you don't use it and you just put it in a sling, it's going to become weak and it's not going to function as well. So that would be the law of disuse. But if you used your arm, just say you didn't even lift weights, you just used it throughout your day and your daily occupations, daily functions, it would be strong. It would be stronger than just being in a sling. And so that is an example of the law of use. And later, Thorndike abandoned this law, so he proposed it, and then later he got rid of it. So the next law is the law of effect, and this concept can be applied to his cats in a box experiment. And so this is where he had hungry cats placed into a box where they weren't able to escape. The only way they were able to escape is by pressing a lever, then opened a gate to the box. And of course, there was fish right outside the box, so it was kind of like enticing for them. They really wanted to get out and indulge in the food. And so this is where behaviors plus pleasant consequences, it's likely to be repeated. And so then the next is behavior plus unpleasant consequences. the behavior, it's likely to be stopped. And so with the cats, they first scratched at the box. They tried to get out in a forceful manner, and it wasn't working. Their consequences, it wasn't pleasant, and so they stopped. But then later, when they were able to open it by pressing a certain lever, and were able to indulge with the food, they repeated that behavior when they were placed back in the box when they were hungry and food was placed outside the box. They repeated by pressing the lever and were able to receive those pleasant consequences from their actions. This can be seen and applied in humans and animals. And he modified it by taking out punishment and left in reinforcement, which was really, really smart, because he proposed this in 1905. And we can see in psychology now that using punishment in learning and behavior and it really doesn't work. And so it was very smart of him to see this way back then and to apply this in humans and in animals. And so here's a picture. You can see on the left there's a dad giving his son a high five, part of like a reward or encouragement for a certain behavior. And then we can just see punishment on this. And of course this cartoon isn't depicting any hitting or anything like that, or any spanking, but sometimes that can be part of the punishment, which doesn't quite work. It actually gives us the opposite thing of what we want. And so I talked about Thorndike's puzzle box experiment, and so this is kind of just what it can be applied for, what we learned from it. And so it can be applied to behavior in humans and animals alike, and we learned a lot from the behavior of why we engage in certain behaviors or why animals do. And then one of his theories is identical elements theory of transfer. So it's exactly what it sounds like. The idea that learning can be transferred to similar areas or subjects. So kind of certain areas or subjects of school. So Thorndike thought that this theory should help guide education, kind of the way that education is set up, and so that students are able to learn and make those connections between their courses or certain subjects or areas in school. So Edward Thorndike, he died August 9th, 1949 in Mount Rose, New York. And Thorndike, he shaped how psychology is today, from changing from functionalism to behaviorism. And also he also pioneered work in educational practices, verbal behavior, comparative psychology, and so much more. He really was the pioneer for how psychology is carried out, and we can see functionalism, how it is in psychology. It's everything that is done and asks the question, what was the point? What are we learning? And so it's really it's not easily noticed all the time in psychology, but it's always there. We can always find it in the practices that we have of psychology.